Our next game is Wizball. It was nominated by @Marco_Nadal_75, and I think that must have been Twitter then. The game was developed by Sensible Software, who I believe made Sensible Soccer or whatever it's called, so quite prestigious developer. It was published by Ocean, who are quite a prestigious publisher, and the platform of release was the Commodore 64, although it was released on every 8-bit microcomputer. I believe it was available on the ZX, the CPC, and you could get it on the Atari ST and the Amiga. But the Commodore 64 version is the superior version. I think basically just entirely, it's completely the best version. Like the Commodore, the Amstrad CPC version doesn't even have scrolling, which if you try and play this game, you'll realize how absolutely insane it sounds to have a game like this without scrolling. The earliest release date was 1987 in Europe. And now to talk about the Wizard of Balls, the Wizball, which is a terrible
Wizard
name.
Of Balls.
No relation to Wizard of War.
Yeah, or the Wizard of Id, or whatever that was.
I guess you could technically call this game a shmup of some sort, although I guess it's also more like Defender, but it also has a lot of its own weird, unique twists of its own.
What I like about this game is that I would describe it as actually kind of like a genuine Euro shmup. Like, if you were trying to find a flavor of game, you know, like, you know what a JRPG, J-shmup is, you know, like all these, like, very Japanese style developed games. Wizball is like, this game was not made in Japan. This game was probably not made in America. This game was made in Europe, and I do like that about this game quite a lot, is it really has a distinct sense of being its own game, being its own thing, which I think is really cool. So you play as a wizard who has to restore color to the land he comes from. It's really weird. It just kind of looks like an empty void of space that has pipes in it.
And the occasional Mount Rushmore. Hey, spy taking.
Everyone wants that Mount Rushmore. Yeah. Very strange, very odd aesthetic. Your wizard pilots a magical giant gobstopper with a face.
Yeah, it's kind of creepy.
Inside it, or is it? It's very weird.
It looks like some demonic frog head or whatever. I don't know how else to put it.
10 out of 10 box art. Buy the game for that. You know, it's just glorious.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy for some reason, even though Douglas Adams hated that little green planet guy. But anyway.
Well, that's his issue, not ours. So basically, you play through a series of levels that are reached by going between pipes that are in the ground or just holes in the floor, and in each level you have to collect paint in order to mix colors in the bottom of the screen. Although it kind of just does this all automatically in the background, so all you need to do is collect power-ups in order to get the Catalyte, which is the third power-up in a Gradius-style power-up system, in order to collect paint, because you are not allowed to touch paint. It'll kill you if you touch it, and you can't collect it if you touch splattered paint, because only the Catalyte is allowed to touch paint for some reason. Once you collect enough paint, you actually color in the stage, which is a really nice aesthetic touch. I mean, Diplob, forget about it. This game from 1987 did color fill. That's really impressive. And you get sent to a bonus stage, and that's cool as well, which is a traditional SMUP level. So the weird thing about this game, though, is that it starts you off in a very unusual control scheme, and is probably the reason that they made you the Wizball. And Bob had some issues with this, so Bob, do you want to talk about the Wizball?
The thing is, you don't move yourself freely from the start. Instead, you bounce off of everything. You're continually bouncing off the floor and the walls. And from the start, this can be very difficult to maneuver like that, because it can be difficult to not hit things, it can be difficult to get through tight spaces. And there are power-ups that can help you fix those issues so you can move a bit more freely, but a lot of the time it's surviving long enough to get those that's the hard part.
But so the interesting thing about this game, and when I played this game, I've played this game twice, and by that I mean I played it several years ago, and I basically had the same problem as Bob. I didn't read the manual, even though the game comes, this is really cool, it actually comes with kind of a built-in manual where it actually, when you've got the title screen, you can actually press the, the run key, I think, or just spacebar or something, and it will actually cycle through several of informative screens about the game, like a little bit about how to play and what different colors mean and stuff. So that was actually really helpful if you actually read that. But when I first played it, I bounced around like an idiot a few times, could barely figure out what to do. I don't even know if I managed to successfully get a power-up. When you get a power-up, because it's a Commodore 64 game, you only have one button, so to input what power-up you want in a Gradius system, you actually have to waggle your controller left and right really quickly. And if you ever watch someone playing this game on YouTube, if they're playing it on a machine, it's really great, because you'll see them try and get the power-up and just be like, as they like mash their controller side to side to activate the power-up. Yeah, once you get one power-up, just one, and the game is very generous in that it actually generates basically 7 power-up enemies for you who are just stationary, I don't know, twirling satellite-type objects. They just kind of hover, like a Jax or something, and they just spin. But if you touch them, you'll die, so you have to shoot them. And once you manage to maneuver into shooting one of those and collecting it, you can get a power-up that lets you control where you move in midair, so you gain midair control. And then once you get a second one, you switch to full control in a Defender-style control system. It's a really interesting way of sort of kind of removing the power from the player right from the start. But then immediately once you get your controls, it becomes a much more normal experience, and it pushes you to get to that first bonus stage by collecting enough of the red paint in the first level, because the first level, once you get 100% red paint, you get whisked off to a bonus stage, and then once you beat the bonus stage, or lose the bonus stage, which is much more likely, you actually get to choose a permanent power-up, which, I don't know, this might be the first game with a Gradius system, because it's 1987, so I don't see how any of them could possibly have beaten it out.
There was also Cobra Triangle, for what that's worth. I think that was around the same time, but it is, I think, a sort of amusing troll that the game sort of throws at you, like, hey, you're going to be bouncing around all the time. Oh, no, wait, hey, you can fight. Okay, we're sorry. We lied. You can have it.
Although, yeah, you get full control.
Although it is a bit of a pain that if you have to restart in a potentially harder level, where you have to bounce around again, and like all the enemies are going to swarm you before you can even get a power-up. I don't know.
It's supposed to regenerate those power-ups to collect, but I think I did have it bug out, so it's not 100% certain. Ideally, you will get through at least one bonus stage before you die. And I also mean ideally because it's a pretty long game, this one. It's got like 7 or 8 stages, and you need to collect enough paint 3 times to fill that stage full of color in order to complete that stage. So you need to shoot a hell of a lot of enemies, really fight your way through a bunch of stages in order to finish the game. And you'll need every life that you can get, because you get some lives from the bonus stage if you're really lucky. You have to fight really hard through that bonus stage to get some extra lives. So it is a... European games can actually get really tough.
I will say Wizball is less agonizing than Monty on the Run, for whatever that's worth.
I feel like Wizball takes a lot more from Japanese arcade games of the time, so they were... I think that's what helps.
Yeah, it has like... it has a slightly Japanese feel, but it's still distinctly European. But what I like about this game is it feels very deliberate, you know? There's not much in this game that exists that I'm like, why is that there? What possible reason does that exist? That's stupid. Why is this here? No, it all feels like, yep, they wanted to do that, they wanted to do that, they wanted to do that, and they did it. And it all... Ultimately, I think this game comes together really nicely. Like, when you have a complaint about this game, it's kind of like, I don't like this because I don't like that thing. It's not really like it feels out of place, or, you know, it's not supposed to be there. It's more like, I just don't like the way that the game does that because I don't like that kind of thing in games, rather than specific failing. It can get a little janky because it's a Commodore 64 game running on, like, less memory than is possible to believe, and they crammed a lot of game into this one, like a substantial amount of game. You know, tons of enemies, a whole bunch of power-ups, a 2-player co-op mode where one player controls the Catalyte instead of the 1-player mode where you have to hold down the shoot button, which triggers auto-fire, and then you can fly the Catalyte around yourself, which is fun too, by the way. Like, it's really fun to, like, fly through the stage, shoot enemies a bunch, and then hold down the fire button and just swoop that Catalyte around to shoot an enemy that's kind of coming at you, or to block a shot coming towards you. or to just collect the paint power-ups, you know. There's a surprisingly large amount to master and learn in this game. One of the bigger complaints I would have is sometimes power-ups can spawn inside the level architecture because they just couldn't get the spawning algorithm probably to fit in the game's code. Well,
yeah.
You know, like...
They tried.
It's like, well, I've got, like... I can write one more line of code in this entire game, so I guess I can't fix this. That's just how it's got to be.
Yeah.
So that's that. And the other thing is, the game has a really nice scrolling system. It scrolls really smoothly. The enemies do pop in a little bit, but not as badly as some other games. And it's got this great starfield in the background. Love that starfield effect. You know, it's who doesn't like starfields in vintage games? They're just these gorgeous scrolling parallaxical things. But because the game developer, I guess, was an asshole, the enemy projectiles are like these tiny little blinking cubes which you can barely see and then you die.
They kind of blend into the particles that show up when enemies die really well.
Yeah, I kind of feel... I can't tell if it was deliberate or if they just didn't have, you know, like, enough memory left over to make the projectiles different. It's a little hard to tell, but...
I wonder if it's any better than the Amiga version. I haven't really played that one yet.
The Amiga version loses out on atmosphere, as far as I understand it. You know, once it becomes slightly more defined, like visually, it starts to look kind of silly and not as fun. And I believe surprisingly, the sound isn't as good. The older SID chip really does a fantastic job on Wizball. It's just got some really great atmospheric sort of sounds when you're shooting enemies and stuff. And then it's got bonus stage music, and the bonus stage music is actually really cool. I mean, we mentioned Monty on the Run. It's not quite Monty on the Run in the bonus stage, but it's a pretty cool track that when you live long enough in the bonus stage, it kicks into overdrive and starts like this really banging chiptune starts playing. Also, when you die, I think there's like a guitar riff when you get game over, like...
Yeah. The composer was Martin Galway, one of C64's most prominent composers and sound wizards. I forget if he was fully employed by Ocean like Jonathan Dunn was, but he's done some good stuff.
Was he the sound wizard of Wizball?
But yeah. Wizball is certainly eclectic, very strange, but rather interesting and innovative game. But
I think innovative is a really important point for this game, though, because it is innovative.
True. But I do think that you gotta have some degree of patience and understanding. Like, this is one that really requires practice, I can tell. Because, you know, you're only given so much for the manual, then when you actually get into it, it's just you're all overwhelmed by bouncing around. Then you figure that out, then you have to figure out what all the other enemy patterns are, how to navigate around all the stage maps, which I don't even think I fully figured out while I was playing.
The stages are a little bit confusing, because as far as I understand it, you can only move between certain stages by dropping down specific tunnels, and it's usually at the far left and far right of the area, and then that will push you down. Because that was a problem I had. I was like, how do I get to level 3? I don't follow this, but to get to level 3, I think you had to drop down the furthest leftmost tunnel in level 2, which I guess once you understand that far to the left and far to the right is the ones that put you up and down, it's like, oh, well, okay, that makes perfect sense, that's reasonable. But until you sort of get that, you're like, huh, that's a bit awkward, a bit hard to figure out. But once you get it, I mean, that's the thing about Wizball, is, as you said, it is a practice makes perfect game, but I think of the many Euro games that exist, I think Wizball is one of the most satisfying to actually play and get good at, because you can. You know, you actually do get better at the game. It's not a matter of kind of cheesing it. There is one trick that this game has that I will reveal to you now. I didn't really make use of this trick myself, but it does say it in the tutorial screen that the game has if you read it, which is a really cool feature, is that you can cycle through the title screen and you get some text. If you go to the very bottom of the stage, you know, like the lowest to the ground that you can go, so you need full control to do this, you're invulnerable to enemy projectiles, apparently.
What's defined as the bottom? Is that where Mount Rushmore is?
Yeah, like that gray strip at the bottom, or that colored strip at the bottom if you have collected colors, because the game actually does change color as you collect colors for the levels. But yeah, if you sit down there, you can You can hide out there, and you won't take any bullet damage. I think enemies can still physically hit you, but you're invulnerable to enemy projectiles. So there's a nice little trick that you can swoop down, and if you really want to cheese the game, you can activate the Catalyte control while sitting at the very bottom, and just fly the Catalyte around and try and take enemies out without too much risk to yourself. So again, it's a bit more involved than some shmups, where this is, again, it's like a platformer, defender, shmup, arcade. It's got a lot going on.
It's a real
and
mishmash.
I think it's really cool.
It's a real mishmash of genres, and of the C64's library, of which consists of a lot of arcade ports and really obscure and hard to get into games, this is one of the more original and approachable original titles that have been made on the Commodore in question that I can think of. And it is good, but it's also tricky. Relatively adaptable, I still think. It's not as easy to get into as most of the things you'd find on the NES or what have you. Or maybe I just suck, I don't know.
Well, I mean, again, as we actually have had feedback, if you weren't in the Euro zeitgeist at the time, this was probably going to be a lot harder to get into in retrospect. But I know that this game was beloved, absolutely beloved by people who played it when it was newer.
Pretty sure you're gonna find it like all the top 20 Commodore games lists.
Easily. I mean, I think this thing, all of the... Any Brit will tell you that you shouldn't trust the gaming magazines from the time, because they just seem to arbitrarily throw out whatever number they felt like, and depending on how much the publisher had paid them that week. But
our friend Guru Larry and his friend Dr. Ashens have definitely made a fair expose of these old Brit mags.
But this game was all 9s and 10s, like heaps of 10s, heaps of 9s. That's what Wizball got, and this wasn't some weird arcane trickery that they just were all idiots. I do think this game absolutely deserved that, especially in '87. It's distinctly different to an NES game. There's not many NES games that feel like this. It is a very Euro game. It's a little bit more arcadish. I could actually see this game working in an arcade. It would need a little bit of jiggering, but I could see it working. It is a one more try game. I actually I played this game the night before this recording, and I ended up staying up an extra, I don't know, half an hour, extra hour or something. Oh, maybe I can get a little further in this game, I just want to get a little further. And I was like, oh, well, that was a shame. Now I'm freaking late. I think it does still have that, it doesn't feel like this game has been replaced, I guess is where I'm going with that. There are so many games in the library that are it's a platformer, or it's a beat 'em up, or it's not a very good shmup or something. And it's you can play better games. You can't really hand me a game that is Wizball. You could say, you could kind of play Defender maybe, but nothing has that exact flavor of Wizball. It's still kind of an interesting and very classic game from the period. So, with that said, we're going to have to rank it.
And you had an idea on where you wanted to put it, right?
I wanted to put this game super high, and I feel like the only person that's going to agree with me is people that aren't on this podcast right now, because it's mostly Europeans, but I genuinely wanted to put this around the Metroid Quicks Tarkin area. That's
maybe
genuinely...
after Disney we should throw him a bone.
Well, as long as we don't throw more eggs at him, right? I guess what I'm saying is, Metroid was a diamond in the rough, and is this as good as Metroid? I don't know, but I think this is it's one of the best Commodore 64 games. It's one of the best Euro games from its time. It hasn't been replaced. I don't think anything's really... If you want to play Wizball, you kind of have to play Wizball. There's not that many, weird side-scrolling Defender-type shmups where you play as a giant floating orb wizard monster man thing. It's distinctly Euro.
The only other game I could think of where you are a ball is Orb 3D on the NES, but I don't think that one's on our request list. I just wanted to mention a bit of parody of which...
I guess Marble Madness would count.
That too.
Games with marbles.
Other games where you're a ball of some sort.
Yes, games where you're a circular object moving around.
I'm sure they exist, I just can't think of any others. Well, that's a slight jag away. Continue.
But basically, as far as I'm concerned, and maybe I'm off base here, but I'm pretty sure that this is very close to like the number one Commodore 64. I know it's had other systems, but it's Commodore 64. It's best on Commodore 64. I'm pretty sure this is one of the best, if not the best, Commodore 64 game. And we open up areas of gaming that we may not necessarily ourselves have been heavily involved in because we're American or we're Australian or, we've never had someone from Japan on our podcast. But if we did, I'm sure they'll never have played Wizball because it's just not in their worldview. But for Europeans, Wizball was a smash hit. It was a huge game, at least in terms of quality. It was the top of the library, and I feel like we should at least acknowledge that, because it's still a great game. I love this game. I didn't think I'd like this game since I didn't like it the first time I played it, but when I gave it the time to actually learn it a little bit, I really liked it. I'm just worried I'm putting it too high, but that's up to you guys.
Well, although you do make a fair case, I think I do have to admit that anyone who didn't grow up in the C64 might not look with Wizball with quite as much reverence. I mean, I think it's an original game. I think it's a really cool one, but I thought it was honestly a really hard one too. I don't know. Maybe I haven't given it enough time to get better at it, but it's pretty unforgiving, I think, at the start. And even as you start to learn things, it does seem like that the levels do get considerably more vicious and Byzantine to navigate as you go on. But just for the concept alone, I would definitely like to put it on the upper half of the list overall. I'm just not sure if I want to put it up around the Metroid tier. Hard to say. I don't know. Bob, what do you think?
I can't think of any reason to not put it there, really. You can say that it's unique for certain. It hadn't been done before, and that does count for a good bit, I would say.
Oh, that's true.
I think it should go above R-Type at least, and probably a bit further than that.
It's less frustrating than R-Type, I could say that. How's that for irony?
What about Somewhere on Echo the Dolphin? Is that too low?
That's...
I don't know what you guys were saying, because I've never seen this Strider placement magically appeared, but
that was one of the bonus episodes we did as a spur last night.
That's fine. What I'm saying is I think it's better. I like this game more than I like the Strider remake, especially since it is essentially...
I was actually eyeing the place between Deus Ex and Windjammers myself. But then again, I do like Windjammers a lot.
I'm okay with that if that's okay for everyone else.
I think putting it around there is an acceptable placement. I just wanted to make sure that I said very specifically that I think it's a great game and that it does deserve some substantial praise.
I mean,
next question.
Great game range. You can't say that Deus Ex isn't great.
Yeah. No, it is great.
We don't have nearly enough representation on the completely unique and originally made for Commodore 64 games, so I think if we want to get one of the better representatives up around the sort of the golden range for games that we have here, I would be cool with that. And with the caveat that the game is kind of tricky, but it's just got such an amusing premise to it. It's very standard.
I feel like on the name and the box art alone, it's already...
yeah, that gets some bonus points, definitely.
Okay, so if we look at Deus Ex, that's the question of what is better, Deus Ex or Wizball? And we have to really break down here.
I'm just going to say I think more people know of Deus Ex and feel it's probably a more complex and more fascinating to get into game.
What I'm hearing is we should put Wizball above it.
Wait, what? I didn't say that.
That's what I'm hearing.
Hey,
because
wait.
Then they'll have to play Wizball because they'll be like, it's better than Deus Ex.
Cheating.
I'll have to play it.
That's not what I said.
Do we need a coin?
I think it's fair when we have such distinctly different games that are neck and neck. It's only fair to leave it up to the irrefutably scientific random chance generator. So, does someone have a coin? I also like to get the coin when there's only 3 people, and I feel that it's a bit fair. The coin acts as the 4th person, because we have... One of you guys getting the coin, or are you just messing with me?
I think Bob's getting one. Or...
Do I have a coin? Wait.
great. This digital age, no one has coins. All right, hold on.
I'm hearing.
I got a penny. I got 3 pennies here. Will that work?
Oh,
You got.
no, that's perfect.
You want a penny? All right, I've got a making a difference. $1. Making a difference.
What the hell? What are you talking about?
My coin says making a difference on it.
Okay, I got my penny. I got another one though. It's okay.
Yay. Okay, well, whoever flips first and gets to the result first.
Oh no, I'm gonna let. I feel like it's. I gotta let Bob flip it because.
Okay.
Well, this is Wizball and it's a giant
got
head. So
tails.
Oh.
you can't flip it before we've said anything.
Cal, usually though, heads means it goes where we want it to, and tails is the lower
Yeah.
roller.
That would be that. It seems like the fact that Wizball is a giant head has let him down. I think he has to go below Deus Ex.
Hey, it's still a great game. Still landed extremely high. Let's not forget that.
Well, that was the final market. No, I highly recommend Wizball. If you're gonna play any Commodore 64 games, it's definitely one to check out. It's Wizball. It has ended up at number 36 on our list, below Deus Ex, above Windjammers. Fantastic game. Catalite, 10 out of 10 pun. It actually is a cat that gets turned into a satellite. It's fantastic. I guess pirate it because I don't think you're going to be buying it